It began as a day of promise. April 15th, 1989. A crisp Saturday afternoon in Sheffield, England. The kind of day football fans lived for. The FA Cup semi-final was set. Liverpool versus Nottingham Forest. Two giants of English football meeting for a place in the final. For thousands of supporters, it was more than just a game. It was a pilgrimage. Fathers brought their sons. Friends traveled in groups, their scarves fluttering from car windows, songs echoing through the motorways. Hope was in the air. No one could have imagined that by the end of that day, 96 lives would be lost, hundreds injured, and a nation forever changed. At 2:30 p.m., the mood around Hillsborough Stadium was electric. Red banners waved in the Leppings Lane end, where Liverpool supporters gathered. The terraces were standing room only, fenced in by high steel barriers meant to separate fans and maintain order. A grim reflection of English football's troubled years of hooliganism. To many, those fences seemed normal at the time, but to the people standing behind them that day, they would soon become cages of death. As more and more fans arrived, the narrow entryways to the Leppings Lane terraces became dangerously crowded. Thousands were still outside as kickoff approached. The crush was growing, bodies pressed tightly together, air thinning. Yet inside the control room, police officers saw it as an issue of crowd management, not a looming tragedy. At 2:52 p.m., Chief Superintendent David Duckfield gave the order that would change everything. Open Gate C. It was meant to relieve pressure outside the turnstiles. Instead, it opened a direct path to the already packed central pens behind the goal, pens 3 and 4. With no stewards redirecting the flow, hundreds of fans poured into a space that could barely hold them. Kickoff came at 3 p.m. as if nothing was wrong. But inside those pens, it was chaos. People were crushed against the steel fences. Some tried to climb up to escape. Others were lifted by those behind them, gasping for air. The roar of the crowd was replaced by desperate screams. But from a distance, from the pitch, from the stands, from the police control room, it all looked like excitement, like fans pushing forward for a better view.
Within minutes, the truth became impossible to ignore. Players noticed. Liverpool's goalkeeper, Bruce Grobbelaar, waved frantically at the police to stop the game. Spectators climbed over the barriers, helping pull others to safety. The match was halted at 3:06 p.m. And in that moment, football, the beautiful game, stood still. On the pitch, the scene was harrowing. Survivors staggered out, dazed and crying. Fans tore down advertising boards to use as makeshift stretchers. Others performed CPR, trying desperately to save friends, brothers, and strangers. But for many, it was already too late. Bodies lay motionless across the grass. Parents searched frantically for their children. In the chaos, there was confusion, disbelief, and horror. How could this have happened? The emergency response was tragically slow and disorganized. Many police officers thought they were facing a pitch invasion. Ambulances were held back outside the stadium gates. Only one made it onto the field. For those trapped or injured, help came too late. 96 people, men, women, children, died that day. Hundreds were injured, Thousands were traumatized. In the hours and days that followed, grief swept across Liverpool. The city became a place of mourning. Outside Anfield, flowers and scarves piled high along the gates. Families clung to each other, trying to make sense of the senseless. But as they searched for answers, they were met with something even more painful: blame. In one of the darkest chapters of British journalism, the tabloid newspaper The Sun ran a headline that would live in infamy: the truth. It claimed Liverpool fans had robbed the dead, urinated on police and attacked rescuers. Lies printed and spread while families were still identifying the bodies of their loved ones. Those false accusations would haunt the victims' families for decades, a cruel attempt to shift responsibility away from those truly at fault. The first official inquiry, led by Lord Justice Taylor, found that the main cause of the disaster was a failure of police control. It was not drunkenness, it was not hooliganism, it was negligence, poor planning, poor crowd management, and fatal errors in judgment. But for the families, that truth wasn't enough. They wanted accountability. They wanted justice. For years, the fight continued. Mothers and fathers of the victims, like Anne Williams and Trevor Hicks, became relentless campaigners. They faced wars of bureaucracy, political silence, and a system that refused to take responsibility. But they never stopped. They spoke for the ones who could no longer speak for themselves. Decades later, in 2012, the Hillsborough Independent Panel released its findings. It exposed a shocking cover-up. Police statements had been altered, evidence suppressed, and blame manipulated to protect those in power. The truth, the real truth, was finally revealed. The victims had been failed by those who were supposed to protect them. In 2016, after 27 long years, a new inquest concluded what the families had always known: the 96 were unlawfully killed. The crowd was not to blame. The fans were innocent. That verdict was more than justice. It was vindication. For every mother who had stood in the rain outside courtrooms, for every family that had carried a picture to memorial services year after year, it was a moment of truth at last. But the pain never truly faded. Time could not heal what happened that day, nor the years of injustice that followed. Today, Hillsborough is remembered not just as a tragedy, but as a turning point. It changed football forever. The Taylor Report led to the removal of standing terraces in top-flight stadiums and introduced all-seater grounds, safer, more regulated, more humane. It marked the end of an era of neglect in British football and the beginning of a new chapter in how fans were treated, not as threats, but as people. Yet even now, each April, as the clock hits 3:06 p.m, Liverpool falls silent. The bells ring, the names are read. 96 souls remembered. Their love of the game, their spirit, their lives frozen in time. The Hillsborough disaster was not just about football. It was about truth, accountability, and the resilience of ordinary people in the face of extraordinary injustice. It was the day football stood still, and a nation learned that behind every chant, every jersey, every crowd, there are human hearts that deserve to be heard and protected. Because in the end, the story of Hillsborough is not only about loss, it is about the courage of those who refuse to let the truth die. It is about justice, hard won through years of pain. And it is about memory, a promise that those 96 will never, ever walk alone.